state. So we're doing good for the city on that. Aside from that, the other thing we've got going with you is on the stormwater side. As you probably are aware, there's what's called the MS4 permit, which stands for Municipal Small Separate Storm Sewers. And so the city is part of a regional permit that is managed by Rogue Valley Sewer. We've been doing that since 2006. We're in the process of a permit renewal. We expect that, actually, we've been expecting it for about the past 6 years, but we're really expecting it for real by the end of this year. We think it's going to happen. But some of the changes that are going to come from that is there's going to be some more strict requirements on storm drain cleaning and inspections. There's going to be more strict requirements on mapping, and there's going to be tighter controls on construction sites. As it stands right now, construction sites a half an acre and larger have to go through a formal plan review process on their erosion control. They're going to squeeze that down, we think, to 5,000 square feet. So pretty much any kind of development except a single-family home is going to be subject to that. So these are the things that we're working on behalf of the city, trying to keep things moving forward on that. We do expect to have a new intergovernmental agreement that we're going to have to execute with the city when the new permit comes out to address these changes, but we expect to incorporate that into our process. Right now, we charge a rate of $1 a month for a single-family home, and we don't expect any change in that. So I think people are getting a pretty good value on that. Other things that we use that money for, if you noticed the nice parking lot you have out there, we contributed part of that. We donate, we help fund, I think, $50,000 towards the construction of that. And then we're also working with Aaron and Ray to get the vegetated swale vegetated. So a lot of the money that we collect for the stormwater fee, we want to put back into stormwater water quality programs, and we're always looking for opportunities to do that. We're hoping to be able to work with the city with some improvements. Is it Blue Heron Park? Is the big park there that we want to work with the city and try to get some water quality incorporated into the redevelopment of that. Beyond that, that's all I really wanted to let you know, just give you a brief update on where we are. Like I said, if there's any questions that come up, if you have any questions about stormwater quality or sewers, we're here to serve you, and we're happy to do it.
Carl, your help with the parking lot was much appreciated. $50,000 goes a long way for us. Thank you.
Well, I mean, we collect the money, and part of it is supposed to go towards capital projects. And one of the problems we have is finding the projects because we don't own any land, and so it's hard for us to get some of these projects built. And so when we find an opportunity, we want to support it.
Cool. Talking about roots and new pipes in Church Street.
Okay.
So on Church Street, we have the situation with the trees. I know from the contractor's standpoint, your standpoint, you guys are going to try to keep as many trees and roots as possible. Tell me how you're going to do that and what's going on with that.
How to keep the roots out of the sewer?
No, well, when you're replacing
how to keep them.
When you're replacing pipes on Church Street.
Okay.
Well, one of our biggest goals is keep as many trees on Church Street as possible, not interfere with the roots during replacing water pipes on one side or sewer pipes on the other side. Right.
Well, we're replacing pipes that are already there, so there's a time limit on how big the roots can be because I'm sure they were cut when they first put those in. But there's ways to do it. When we get into areas that have a lot of big trees and roots and stuff, we can get in there and excavate with the vacuum truck. It's tedious, time consuming, but you can excavate around the roots if you do need to save them and get underneath of them. It does add a lot of time and expense to the project. A lot of it just depends on the size of the tree. I know a lot of places, almost every time we do work in Jacksonville on an older street, they want us to have an arborist out there to monitor it. So it can be done. You just got to be careful about it. And like I said, it depends on the size of the tree and how close you are and the size of the, I think, the arborists can tell you there's a certain amount of root you can cut without hurting the tree too badly.
Cool, thank you. Council, any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just wanted to thank you for running such a well-run organization. You do a super, personally, you do a super job.
Well, thank you.
Thanks, Carl. Next up is Katie Farrell. We'll talk recycling and
Hello again. Yes, we all are back here. It's good to see everybody again. I had a great time with the candidates night, and we're all just waiting on the edge.
you did a nice job that night, Katie. Thanks for doing that.
Well, thank
Your
you all.
moderator.
You made it easy. You made it actually very enjoyable. I felt sorry for the timekeeper, though. Poor Caroline. Anyway, I am here. I'm Katie Farrell. I live on 716 First Street in Phoenix. I also have an office at 107 West First Street, which is the Center for Creative Change, which I share with the Pollinator Project and Beyond Toxics satellite office from Eugene. But I've been very involved with Project Drawdown. And I brought you the book. I don't know if you're any familiar, but we've taught the Drawdown classes. This is work that was pioneered by Paul Hawken, who's a scientist and put together huge research teams to actually evaluate the efficacy of 100 solutions to climate. So they really went for the science in this, not the argument, and actually rated them by efficacy, cost, and cost impact. So it's a very big global movement, which is getting us out of the debate and actually helping us to actually make some changes. I act as the facilitator for a lot of the drawdown action teams that have already formed in our valley, and we're going to be offering the introduction, I think November 28th at the Phoenix Library, so we're kind of moving into Medford and Phoenix. I want to circulate these just so you guys could take a look.
Okay.
And there's a handout here, if you bring one right away, the first 80 or 100 solutions there, and the sectors. I personally am sort of chairing the materials sector, which is which recycling falls into that category. And we have done just an enormous amount of study and touring of road disposal, meeting with them, meeting with Habitat, looking at all the communication things that might be necessary to try to get the public a little more informed about what is available. But you probably received, I hope you all received, the 5-point report that I did. Did everybody get a chance to look at that?
It's in our packet.
Okay, so I kind of, after all the research and material, and you're always welcome to come to my office and take a look, came to a few conclusions. Of course, number one would be to try to create, with support from road disposal, and maybe via a DEQ, Department of Environmental Quality grant, the means to actually create a recycling center here somewhere in Phoenix. So funding and finding appropriately zoned sites for a recycling center would be one priority that we would love to see. To keep people from having to drag their recyclables all the way out to the substation, driving a lot of gas, and or just dumping it in their garbage. I know a lot of citizens are concerned about it, and a couple other things. Single-use plastics, styrofoam has been banned in Ashland for about 30 years. And I, in about 7 or 8 years ago, helped a student through another nonprofit I was running to get it banned in Medford. We still have it, and it's really one of the most toxic substances that you can have in use. And there's so many great, truly compostable restaurant containers and other things that we could be using now. So there may be a focus on that. Single-use plastic is being banned all over the world. India banned it. If they can do it with, 7 billion people, I think we should be able to kind of push back on that. There's so much information. I guess I can just recap the other 4 points. Of course, I said another important prong for the solution team is to educate consumers and manufacturers about how to reduce plastics and packaging on the front end. And this is where we're looking at, deposits on glass wine bottles or bottle washing, all kinds of other systems that can be brought forward. Because ultimately, the recycling center is a bridge to get us to a better relationship with packaging and plastics, where we don't have to be consuming so much of that. We have another team that's working a lot on food waste, which is also another big contributor to CO2 gases. So there's that. The planned action on that was our team will be working with local businesses and the Phoenix Chamber of Commerce to reduce unnecessary and non-biodegradable product use and help find substitutes. After we took tours, and I would encourage you all, if you have time, I couldn't believe it, but Laura Liebrick and her team at Rogue Disposal, they do over 200 tours of those facilities every year. So if you really want to learn what they're doing, wow, they're doing quite a bit, but they are willing to interface with cities to create more opportunity. I think they feel that they were maybe a little, the real problem came with this bottleneck of the markets. Road Disposal consider themselves not a utility as much as a broker of materials that they collect. And when the China stopped taking, or the price dropped from $150 per cubic yard to $3, they've been having to back up and push back on what they can contain. But we've been identifying domestic markets for a lot of those products, and this is a huge cyclical turnover. So I'd say the time we're in now is a bridge. So we have to address some things, but ultimately there will either be domestic uses for those products, because they're starting to find 3D printers, other things that we can make use out of what we have to reclaim from the ocean. You probably all know there's a gyre of waste out in the Pacific, two times now the size of Texas. A lot of this doesn't come from American landfill, but we still need to take leadership in every community to address the issues. So the need to educate consumers, like Road Disposal and Habitat have long lists of where people can actually get rid of a lot of the things that they're using and don't know how to correctly dispose of. So we're really working to make that a little more accessible. So the tours are a great thing. We were requesting our team to prepare information to be possibly included in the city's newsletter at some point, so that people would have a direct line to information. If you go on some of these websites, you look, but you don't have time to drill down, and really find the specifics or the really important pieces. So we're kind of doing that for you. We may apply for our education grant next year from DEQ. We got very close in partnering with Road Disposal, but they have so many crises right now that they couldn't really step out. So really the logical partner for applying for DEQ would be the City of Phoenix. And we are going to be talking to Medford too in the county, but I like to start where I live and see, that seems like the most friendly place to start. I also included in your packet, because I work very hard with all the Granges in the valley and in the state, we've become revitalizing the Green Granges as a movement to impact legislation all over the state, and really getting a lot of attention nationally now, because we're pointing out to them the problems of pesticides, the problems of a lot of the things that we're finally recognizing are contributing to health issues and contributing to all kinds of crises in the world. And so even for people who can't really believe in climate change, I think that the better lens, I call it global weirding. It's just getting weird out there, but we do have a soil crisis, food crisis, water crisis, all these reasons for the work to get done in a pretty rapid fashion. So there's also a fifth option we're working with on a privately owned site where we can actually demonstrate some of the creative reuses that are possible, and do more education on this topic. I think I included some information, maybe not too relevant, but I think that the resolution that was adopted by the State Grange this year regarding recycling has a lot of value because it's sort of already done there for you. And I think I did include that with your packet, maybe in the first letter I sent you.
It's in here.
Okay, so I would say that that is definitely something that could be evaluated. And I guess my top goal right now is, one, after talking to Aaron, to, see what are the priorities of the city in regard to these 5 points. And two, to see if we could have either a blue ribbon committee of people from the council and city, or a study session or something where we could go a little deeper into it and start kind of problem solving and brainstorming and see what we can come up with. I think road disposal is fairly interested in providing the bins. Their problem now is best solved by having pre-sorted things. So, and we had talked about that, Mayor, yeah, to have a site somewhere that would probably have to be supervised, and we might be able to come up with some volunteers from the drawdown teams to do that. But a place where people could actually bring their cereal boxes, their glass, everything that is not, I mean, they're only taking 4 items in the red bin now: newspapers, tin cans, milk jugs, and corrugated cardboard. I personally don't use any of those things. I don't have any of those things. But there's a million other things that people are either dragging to their landfill or sneaking it into Recology, which isn't really very nice because that's a City of Ashland funded, center. So I would request that if we could have a few people from the city who are interested to explore the different options I've kind of laid out, and possibly consider adopting a resolution similar to this, just to show you're getting on board with this part of the issue. That would be absolutely wonderful. Okay, do you guys you must have questions. I mean, you can't believe how complicated this really is. And even just getting to the place where I could lay it out there without all the pages of information that are available.
I had a couple questions and
Okay.
comments. Right? So we've spoken before, and I've really stressed the need to have the idea be sustainable. So that if, I gave the example of Schnitzer Steel. If there's a bin somewhere in the city or somewhere in Medford property, and it can be filled with metals, and Schnitzer Steel can come pick it up once a month
Right.
or every other month, and they can make money on recycling that steel, it's a sustainable type of way to recycle something. It may not work as well with bedroom furniture or television sets, but the idea is
Right.
have to be sustainable. And I like your idea of having a blue ribbon committee, but I think the committee should be members of your team, and maybe we can join them once in a while, maybe you can join them once in a while, and that committee is not encumbered by certain rules and regulations that would encumber a city-led committee, such as having to notice meetings,
Right.
publish meetings.
But if there's a couple of people interested who want to join us, we're going to
Yep.
continue the conversation and the work.
Yeah.
I think your point on steel, and we did meet with Habitat. Habitat for Humanity is actually doing a lot of these things.
Right.
So I think the second phase, we're trying to put this information in the hands of the public to say, okay, here's where you take your refrigerator, and here's where you can get rid of that
Yep.
steel, and all these different things
And as
is
far as I
important.
to put here, I can put that in the mayor's newsletter. So if you have some ideas, I
Right.
can do a one-page spread, 2 pages max, but we can put it in there and get it out to the public
Right.
here in Phoenix within the Phoenix newsletter. And how many members do you have, Katie, in the drawdown team?
Oh, boy, and that team, about 20,
About 20?
yeah,
Good.
quite a few, actually. A lot of interest and a lot of need, because we're just, we're just starting where other cities have kind of at least a system in place, and even they are struggling because of the lack of, places to sell the things now. So,
Right.
yeah, I think getting the word out about a lot of things, but frankly, in the bridge time, the important piece is not the big items. It's the everyday items that used to go in the curbside recycling bins that are now not allowed. And those are the things that are just kind of accumulating and going into the landfill unnecessarily. Because if we can sort them somewhere on a city property that road disposal would pick up from, then we solve a transportation, of everybody going over to the White City substation, which is quite a haul, I've got to say, or just simply throwing it away. And there is no way, and that's what we're finding. To be responsible, I think we have an obligation to at least short-term maybe And maybe we can get a handle on the front end. You know, we're talking to manufacturers about products that we like and say, hey, your container is so great, it would last 50 years. Can we refill it? Can we start looking at all this packaging and all this unnecessary reprocessing of packaging? So I think that having a way to deal with it responsibly now and then start tackling all the other fronts, like refrigeration, that's a huge component. In fact, one of the discoveries in the drawdown research was, we hear about the methane, we hear about the fossil fuel, but the number one offender for CO2s, you know, gas up there is abandoned refrigeration. Just trucks and truckers who leave, you know, the last 5% there, and that's 1,000 times more damaging than CO2. So that was an incredible discovery, to actually do the evaluation, the scientific evaluation, not the rumor, you know, not the, you know, we propose this, but that is really the bottom line of fact. So I wish you'd send that around, Aaron. I mean,
I wanted them to be able to hear you and pay attention.
okay.
So.
All right, well, I have to take the book back, but you can keep the handouts. And I have a million other things. I'm down in my office Tuesdays and Wednesdays from noon to 5, if anybody wants to stop by.
Yeah, I just have one more comment, and maybe somebody else has a question or two. So Katie's looking for land to put recyclable bins on, but Phoenix doesn't have land to put bins on. I know you look for private property also, so if someone knows of private property along 99 where you could place bins
You know,
and...
one thing that occurred to me, and it kind of came out of the council, or the candidates night, I've been working in Jim Hartman's class. He's teaching 3 climate solutions classes and 2 biology classes and building the curriculum for a high school level. And he's coming out with some amazing, you know, research and documents. But when we were talking in the candidates night about the big lot that's a problem for fires and a lot of things over there, that I think we're going to try to offer the drawdown class next year at Phoenix High. And I'm wondering if that might not be a place where some of this, because a lot of the kids are very interested in you know, recycling is something they can kind of wrap their heads around, they can kind of understand it, that might actually be a place where kind of a pilot program could happen. So I'm going to talk to Jim Hartman and see if he can talk to the science teachers he knows. Because that's the kind of, you know, just partnering that we need. And I think Road Disposal is anxious to unite with the city of Phoenix to provide some additional service here. If we could identify, you know, and what we found was, in terms of the bigger picture of recycling, from the red bins, from the big dumpsters and all this stuff, that it really has to be an entity like Road Disposal that can handle the capacity. I mean, it's not a home project, you know. You can't really do it. So I'm going to be studying that more.
Any questions from council? Okay, thanks for your enthusiasm in the projects.
Yeah.
We'll talk more about this with Aaron and get
All
together.
right. Okay, well, good. Well, we're going to keep moving on, so we hope that
Thank you.
you can find a way to participate.
Okay, cool.
All right, Katie.
Thanks, Katie.
Thanks.
You know, next up, we get a very special presentation. And, you know, there's one staff member we've had here for a long, long time that does a terrific job for the city. I mean, Terry and I went over to have coffee with a cop and met a bunch of sheriff's officers over at Debbie's Diner. And the name Derek Boger kept coming up as a respected leader here in the city. Believe it or not, Derek. And Derek's respected by people over in Talent, officers there, officers here, of course. And they talk about how if someone wants to retire and they want to go to a certain city here in the valley, they're going to look at Phoenix and maybe Talent as a place to go to retire. He's done a terrific job for us, and today happens to be his 10-year anniversary. I don't think he even knows.
As chief.
But somebody came as chief. So I guess, Aaron, how'd you find out again?
JC and I were looking at some personnel stuff. I don't even know how it came across,
Yeah.
but we saw the date of November 6th, actually, November 6th of 2008, as he became chief. So all of a sudden it was like, well, that was 10 years ago, like today.
He does a hell of a great job for us. Police department's on autopilot, run by a great guy, and got a plaque for you, Derek. Come on up. Surprise! Thanks, Derek. Next up, we have public comments. Anybody sign up to talk today? Oh, you gimpy? Nobody? Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I knew that. Good job.
Next up is the consent agenda. We've got, I guess, 3 things on there. Metro Water Commission System Development Charges. They actually lowered the SDC rate. Council log updates and minutes from the last city council meeting. Anybody want to pull anything from the consent agenda?
I don't wish to pull anything, but there's one minor typo error in the minutes, which has been addressed. So, they know what it is, we don't have to pull it.
It's already noted. Okay, great. Anything else, guys? Okay. I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent calendar.
So moved.
Anybody? Okay. Any more discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, it's approved unanimously. New business, resolution number 1027, resolution to adopt procedures for deferral of City of Phoenix system development charges. Aaron, you gonna have,
Yeah, I would like to have our planning director, Evan,
all right.
speak to this.
Good job on prepping it, Evan. Very nice work.
Oh, thank you. Okay, Evan McKenzie, Planning Director. So what we have, I think, is the result of several conversations we have had with the council regarding deferral of SDCs. The way this was built was quite literally the opposite of the way most of these things happen. I actually started with the form and then wrote the resolution. Feeling that if I captured everything in the form, then I'd just put that in the resolution and we'd be done with it, which is mostly what you have. There is one important thing that I want to go over with the council, and that was something that is in the default and remedies language. That's on packet page 30. Item B under default and remedies would appear to allow someone to get a certificate of occupancy without payment of SDCs. This was language I pulled from another source. And so I think one thing we just want to be sure on before we adopt anything, and that might be resolvable tonight, is does this language need to be amended to just take out the reference to certificate of occupancy, which I think would fix it? Or does the council want to leave that door open so that someone could get a certificate of occupancy, occupy the building, and start doing whatever it is they're doing, and then get a penalty? At which point, technically, we should be shutting off their water, and so they shouldn't be occupying the facility. So it's just language that I probably didn't read over enough times to be comfortable with before this went out to everyone. And it's something I want you to be aware of, and I don't know if our city attorney might like some input on that also, because it does appear to open a door that maybe we don't want left open.
So you're on page 30. Where on page 30 are you?
Default and remedies on B, it's the last item on that page.
Okay.
There are references to a certificate of occupancy. And I'm not comfortable with that because it would appear to allow us to grant a C of O and then basically issue a penalty, but have to deal with our attorney and somebody else's attorney in order to collect potentially. And I think that's the whole point of this, is to do our best to make sure that we don't get in that situation.
You discuss it in C, D, and E above also.
So,
It's in where, above?
so this, the language in C, D, and E does have certain penalties, basically where you would have
Oh, I see.
no right to anything else. But the language in B, after this went out, I realized that someone might construe that as saying, well, I can get it, I just have to pay the penalty, and then we're sitting there for who knows how long trying to collect that money. So I don't know if our attorney or anybody else has any feelings on simply striking references to certificate of occupancy in that, and just say failure to pay within a year.
1 year.
I think that would be my recommendation, unless the council does desire that door to be left open.
I think you're right. Striking that makes sense, and just leaving us certificate of occupancy makes sense.
Well, I mean, what you're saying is that it goes without, it implies, when you're looking at the remedies, that you can get a certificate of occupancy,
Right.
but you just have to pay the penalty.
Um,
And that's what you don't want.
Right.
Well, that's what I don't want. I'm not sure what the council
Well,
wants.
I mean, I would agree that would be, I mean, if nothing else, you'd want to, if you want that to be allowed, then you got to make that clear, because that's an ambiguity that you don't want to be arguing with in the future when you're not
No.
around or.
Right. So personally, I would like to strike that, but I don't know if there's agreement from council.
I would too, on council last week, talk about 1 year. Michael was talking about that as the last time that you can make the payment. So I think it should be stricken. Anybody else?
So the,
Anybody want to keep it in there?
um,
Okay. Hearing none, we'll just strike it then, okay?
and so the only other two questions I think that are outstanding, and I don't know if there's much discussion on this or not. We had discussed a maximum amount of deferral of 200,000, but that was only, I think, in conversation and not at your direction. So I want to be sure the council is comfortable with that number, and if not, what number that should be. And then the only other minor thing was that staff had proposed a fee of $150, which should cover our costs to do it. And if that feels fair, then fair enough.
It's the same as Medford's, by the way. I think it's a fair amount.
Yeah, if it covers your costs and time, that's fair.
What about the $200,000, guys? It's $200,000 of just Phoenix SDCs. Of course, a lot of people, the SDC would be a lot more than $200,000, but maybe 200,000 is the maximum amount.
Is
for
that
Phoenix.
on per project, or is that, like, if a developer is doing multiple projects, then the max that they can have is $200,000?
That, I would assume that to be per project. We could certainly add to that section to clarify. You're right, it doesn't specifically say, although typically we're not assessing SDCs for multiple projects at once.
Yeah, you've got, at the very top, it says notice of lien and right to contest SDC.
Which page?
Yeah, that's going to be on page
29.
29.
29, okay.
It's referencing a property, and I don't know how often you'd have more than one project on the same property. So you'd want to do this with each property. So if the person had several different properties, then it would be different permits, right? I should also just comment too, before you get too far, your council communication references an ordinance, but this would not be an
Oh.
ordinance, this would be a resolution.
Yes.
Because you've got the fee already set, it's just how do you want to address this fee? So it's really more of a rule as opposed to a law, if that makes sense.
And we had discussed doing this by ordinance, but then when I looked up most of our, in fact, I think all of our SDCs were done by resolution, and so.
Yeah, I mean, you can adjust the fee, or you can adjust how it's paid, or those types of things, and that's what you're doing here, and you would do that by resolution or rule.
And then the only other minor thing I'd want to call your attention to is on the agreement on page 29 at the top there, you'll see where it says applicant and Oregon Limited Liability Company. obviously that whole section would change to reflect whoever we're doing this for.
Yeah.
Speaking of LLC, on page 30, item G, it talks about developer agrees that the obligation to pay the deferred amounts due under terms of this agreement is both personal to the developer and shall be recordable as a lien on the property. But you have LLCs, you have trusts, you have C corps. I mean, we can't bind one of the individuals if it's a regular corp or LLC or a trust. Right, Mr. Attorney?
You can.
Opinion.
You can, I mean, banks do it all the time.
You can.
Yeah, I mean, if you go in there and I say I'm an LLC and they say fine, and you are also going to be liable for this if this thing doesn't go through, so yeah, it's,
If we can do it, that's great.
yeah.
There's also a lien recorded on the physical property also, correct?
Yes, the way we did this is to make it personal both to the, I could envision, for instance, a developer, you know, not to disparage any developers around here, but I mean, developer that just kind of like doesn't work out, so now he's leaving the project, and so he leaves or goes bankrupt, and now you're stuck without $200,000. So I'm sitting, you're kind of like going, well, you know, how are we going to do this? And if it's a corporation has no assets, then the person you want to go after is personally the developer. So you'd have both developer and development. I've seen these with well, it's different, but it's with affordable housing, you know, where the whole thing goes belly up or whatever, or they change owners and now you're chasing after people trying to get, so I don't know, it's a belt and suspenders maybe, but I just was kind of.
If you can do both, I'm all game
Yeah.
for it. I didn't know if you
Okay.
could do both.
Yeah, I
That's
just,
great.
yeah, I was just being belt and suspenders.
And I noticed on H on page 30, do we need to be more specific with that? So we're in primary lien position? So we would go, is that where it
Well-
speaks to, we would be in front of a bank or any kind of contractor's loan or anything like that?
You could try it, but I don't think any bank's gonna allow that to happen. Can't imagine a bank subordinating its lien to Phoenix. It'd be the other way around. That's what ends up happening. That's what, you know, I
'Cause I
have
know
experience in
properties-
some things. I don't have vast experience in these, but the experience I've had is developers have come in and they need the city to subordinate a lien, again, on affordable housing and those types of things, where in order for them to get this thing through.
To
and-
get the loan?
Yeah, they say, well, you know, we need you to back off on stuff, and for whatever reason, cities do it.
So I know other government things like property taxes take primary lien position.
Well, the taxes do,
Okay,
they will, but this is not a tax, this is a fee.
okay.
I would add that we do still have the withholding water and sewer. And so if someone were to go belly up, I mean, the idea of not having water and sewer service is going to generally prevent the use of whatever it is that was built. And so the system-wide impacts would not be felt. And so it may not stop everything, but it does prevent some of the impacts from occurring until those fees are paid.
Gotcha.
Or at least that's the idea.
Great. Now, for the other thing, just for clarity on this, when we had property, say a developer is doing a neighborhood, like a Traco neighborhood or something, would this 200,000 apply to the whole subdivision, or would this be on individual properties?
This is probably, that's a good question.
Okay, so here's how it can happen, and that is that, you might have a developer that would say, okay, look, I'm gonna be selling each house. As I sell the house off, I reduce the amount of lien on the house, on this by that amount. So you could then, reduce the amount, I mean, in other words, they'd just be paying a fee off as they sell the homes.
So typically, we don't assess SDCs until building permits. And so a subdivision will not trigger SDCs. The permits for the individual houses on lots would.
Would.
Now, obviously, there are, so an
Yeah,
apartment
Yes,
complex,
property, yeah.
is different. It would, an apartment complex would trigger SDCs with the first building permit submittal, which would typically, well, I don't want to say typically, which might be for a building. At which, and so,
A multi-unit building, yeah.
right. If you want to amend that language in B for the maximum amount of deferral, you could say, on an individual property or or you could add language for development site, say, subdivision or PUD or development project or something. I'm not sure the best
And
language
that's what I
for
was
that.
getting at. Should we layer that in there to add a PUD or development site?
Because yes, if you have 200 houses and you're deferring SDCs on each of those, you could have a very large sum
Be over
being deferred.
200K, yeah.
So I
Just-
don't know.
For perspective, how much were our SDCs for like the Rite Aid and for the Tailored Elements project? I know you had it last one,
I
but-
don't have, those were on the last agenda report, but they're not included here. I don't recall what those were.
Tilly was
Um,
close to 200,000,
It,
but
yes.
that's all SDC, not just Phoenix.
Correct. I don't recall what the Phoenix-only SDCs were. So if we want to, and that is a good question, do we want to limit it on a project basis so that individual houses within, of course, even a large developer is not going to have 60 starts all at once. Even when I was in Reno, we might have gotten 20 or 30 a week citywide. And those were spread out among multiple projects. But yeah, you could get 10 or, if we had a really big project, you could get 10 or 15 permits in a week. And that every week, if they're still building and selling.
But you could tighten it up to accommodate Mike's request, right? So you're talking about sites, right? Or
We could do that. That's probably something, I'm not sure we want to do that tonight, or do you want us to come back with something? That's up to you.
we have to come back to it with a resolution drawn anyway, right?
It's,
Yeah, it's not a first and second reading or anything.
right.
Yeah.
So
We're in the rough draft phases.
Yeah,
it doesn't bother me, and we're not exactly getting projects right now, so I think if we were to delay and come back with something cleaner, it's not going to hurt anything.
Just for fun, the Rite Aid from the last council packet was 163K. South Main Place, the townhouses each 6,500 per townhouse. So that would be a question, would we do SDCs per, that's not
yeah,
gonna
that's kind of
trigger.
back to Counselor Westover's question
Right.
as to whether or not it's one property or multiple properties. I'll have to look at the SDCs on a platted subdivision. I don't know.
We could amend that language to read 200,000 per development site,
Per developer.
or project,
Yeah, or development.
and maybe even, parentheses, subdivision, PUD, site plan review, something like that, to clarify that you're gonna hit a limit at some point. That's
Yeah,
reasonable.
I guess you have to ask yourself what the limit is for. The limit is how much money does the city want to leave out there essentially
How much
for
do we
some
want to front
developer?
the builders? Yeah, so
Yeah,
I want to have
so would it be
I
for
want
a
to have a
builder?
safety net, like a firm backside where
Yeah, right.
we're not exposing too much financial risk. We're making it attractive possibly and helping to promote some development, but we're also not hanging the city out there in the dry
Yeah.
either.
That's fine. Why don't you guys go ahead and massage that language in there? And was there,
We can do that.
was there anything else by council? Is it okay?
Thanks for indulging all my questions.
Yeah.
So your staff just come
As long
back
as
to
you
us
don't
with
accept all my answers.
your staff just come back with a resolution next meeting or the meeting after?
Sure.
No huge rush, but yeah.
Thanks for all that. That's a lot of work. Thank you.
Anything else? Ed?
I don't think so. So if that's good, unless there's anything else, we'll bring you back something a little cleaner next time and have a vote.
Sounds good.
Just one thing. The 200,000, I'm just trying to figure out a logic decision tree to get to a number, any number. And all that can come to my mind is, if we had a list of all the things over the last 2, 3, or 4 years, whatever, would anybody have gotten trapped by this because the 200,000 is low enough to catch them? Or are we setting something so high up here, all the noise is down here, that will never affect it?
Exit 24 storage, I think, was the biggest we've had. I'd have to look up what the total fees for that were. It was not a small number. I don't think their city SDCs were more than this. It would have to be a pretty sizable project. Medford's, I think, if my memory is correct, was 500,000, but they are more full service. And so they have SDCs that we don't locally. To be honest, I pulled the $200,000 out of air. It seemed a reasonable start, but if the council thinks we should have a different number, then that's fine.
Yeah. I don't think I can, I'm just trying to find a logic.
Yeah.
Well, looking at the relative costs of like the SDCs for Rite Aid at 163K, it seems like a project of comparable size or a little bit larger would be within that.
But that's all SDCs, not just Phoenix SDCs, right?
So, do you know? I don't want to guess.
Yes. So, it's gonna be a lot less, because the SDCs include Rogue Valley Sewer Services, Medford.
City SDCs only rounded to the nearest dollar. Water parks, transportation, IDC, and stormwater totaled 163,428,
Wow.
which was 7.78% of the structure value.
And not everything will have the IDC
Got it.
unless it's within that boundary.
Interchange development fees also, got it. IDC. And Ray, did you want to make a comment on this? I saw you waving your hand. No? No? Okay.
The developers, if they want to avoid that $200,000 threshold, they'll simply make up a different LLC and change the developers' names, you know, it's Wi-Fi project. Makes it easier to control from a Wi-Fi processing standpoint in-house. So if they want to phase a project, they can change names. So, you know, I don't think that's a big issue, but the $200,000 threshold, like Evan said, is less than half of what they're doing in Medford, so it probably makes a reasonable statement there. I also think that it's a good aggressive approach to look at, I don't think you turn off sewer services necessarily, but to turn off water services for federal payment to SDCs. You might have someone clever enough to challenge that if they pay just the water SDCs. And said you can't really shut off my water, pay the water SDCs. There's a lot of different clever elements to it, but I think it's best to stay in an aggressive posture when you're talking about giving some allowances for those types of things.
Thank you.
And the only comment I was going to make too, and that is in your answer to Councilor Snyder, and that is that when you're looking at the number, you're allowing them to defer payment. Well, if you had the payment up front, you'd be collecting interest on it. So I mean, it's money that you guys are not getting by waiting. So the amount really is not so much. I don't think you have to worry if anyone's going to be doing that big of a project. They're probably not going to be one that's not going to pay you in the end. It's probably more of those smaller ones. But it's really, you know, how much money do you guys want to waive off when it could otherwise be in your coffer? So that's kind of the calculus. I would think it's what you'd be looking at.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Yeah, right. Yeah.
On the backside, though, if we can stimulate development, then we're going to get that increased tax basis.
There's probably somewhere in there where you're going to, you know, at some point, kind of like, well, I'm not going to
Keep it simple.
give you that big of a what? Yeah, right, at some point, yeah.
Okay, one more time, Ray.
It's
We're
all
open.
risk assessment at some point, but really what you're doing here is risk assessment.
Yeah.
That's why you're setting number 200. The developer is somebody who's on solid financial footing, or a corporation that's doing developments in other areas and has the financial wherewithal to push a project, where you're not as risk averse as you are to somebody that is reaching as a developer for something that they've never done before, extending themselves financially because they're a smaller developer. So I think
$163,000 for Rite Aid, only $25,000 was for water.
Yeah, well, the water numbers get big for these commercial developments that have to put in, larger meters, especially when putting in, fire protection meters.
Yeah,
You know, the exit 24 self-storage facility put in a large,
I bet, yeah.
water meter that's gonna be the same way for the keep that. One of the things that the, South Main Place project did that really drove up the fees for them were that they individually metered each unit. Rather than doing a master meter for the development, you put in 15 individual service connections and 15 individual meters for each unit and several additional meters for irrigation.
For separate billing.
Well, they have an HOA for their common area maintenance, so those meters are gonna be, funded through an HOA, but still, you're still talking about 18 different meters. There are ways for developers to minimize those types of, development costs. And, you know, in those types of instances, a master meter is a good way to go. But if you lose your flexibility for individually metered units.
Okay. Are we good for now?
I think so.
Okay.
I will add under E for the water and sewer disconnects, failure to pay all applicable charges. So it will clarify that it is all, not just water.
Thank you. All right,
Good
well,
clarification.
do your thing, come back to us, okay?
Okay,
All right, thanks a lot. Next up is F. It's a first reading by title only of ordinance number 998, an ordinance vacating public right-of-way in the city of Phoenix. This is kind of an oddball item, and we have a gentleman here representing the company that's asking for the vacation. But do you want to talk about that a little bit?
of course.
Okay.
So, yes, it is a,
Just keep
it'll
talking.
go?
Just keep talking. If it doesn't go, I'll come over.
Okay. So it is a little bit of an oddball right-of-way vacation in that there's not even an unconstructed street there. There's no street at all. We're good?
Oh, speak.
And I don't know if the applicant's representative might have a little more information on the history of this and how it came to be that the Phoenix Elementary School yard is in a street. But, so it gives new meaning to go play in the street. But it's definitely not been constructed. It doesn't appear to be needed. We don't appear to have any utilities within the area in question, nor do we have any plans to extend utilities into the area in question. And so regarding whether or not we need the right-of-way today or in the future, I think the answer is very clearly no. So in your staff reports, obviously you have images. This is mostly for anyone in the audience. But the area that's proposed for vacation is not being used for a street and is actually fenced off. So there is no public access to the area. And so seeing no reason not to vacate it, staff is inclined to recommend that the council approve the request.
They built 3 buildings in that area.
And yes, there also appear to be a couple of buildings on it, so it is what it is.
And the district owns the 2 adjacent properties there? The
Yes.
3400 lot, the 100 lot, or whatever.
And
So-
also under the canal, right? Irrigation canal.
Yes,
It does.
the canal does run through the property and the right-of-way.
But Evan, can you think of any reason why we shouldn't approve this?
No.
No, I don't think so. Any question by council?
I don't know if Ray, you want to second that, no reason not to?
Please.
It's a no-brainer.
That's it for me.
Okay. So this is just the first reading, no public hearing today. So I'll entertain a motion to approve this.
I'll get it. Hold on, everybody wait for a second. I move approval on first reading by title only of an ordinance of the city of Phoenix vacating the Houston Road public right-of-way located between tax lots 3400 on Assessor Map 38-1 West-09 DC and tax lot 100 on Assessor Map 38-1 West-16 AB, with all vacated lands attaching to tax lot 3400, and move the ordinance to second reading.
Good Good job.
Second.
Any more,
We get to read it second reading.
any more discussion? Let's do a roll call.
Counselor Shunt,
Yes.
Counselor Snyder,
Yes.
Counselor Cameron,
Yes.
Counselor Westover,
Yes.
Counselor Warren,
Yes.
Counselor Baker.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right. Next up, city attorney report. Anything? No, you good?
Nothing, everything's good.
City manager?
I wanted to thank Carl Pepper for coming tonight. We've got a really good relationship with our ESS. Also, he mentioned the $50,000 for the parking lot out there. Incredible amount of money to go forward, so I really appreciate that. Also wanted to say that really excited. I think I saw the chief there, little tear or something when he got there.
He's been caressing it the whole time, I've noticed.
I know he had to leave the room for a minute. That's all I have.
Little
You
moment.
know, while we're at, why don't we button up the cancellation of the second meeting in December? Is council okay with canceling the meeting? And any objection to, Jim, you're not gonna be here anyway, so.
Well, I think you should hold the meeting because
Good torturous around the holidays? No, you guys good? Okay, so we'll go ahead and cancel the meeting for the, I think the 17th. Okay,
Great.
thank you. Anything else? All right, around the horn. Ms. Cameron?
So in regards to the Chamber of Commerce, they would like to request and see if the council would be willing to do a work study session on the 19th, 30 minutes prior to the council meeting. They're requesting moving forward, discussing the office space, and then also on the strategic plan, it talks about having a conversation with the Chamber of Commerce in regards to outreach and community events. So they're requesting to see whether you guys would be willing to meet 30 minutes before the next council meeting or not.
Okay.
Discussion.
Any, so we started at 6 instead of 6:30 on that day.
Yeah.
Any objections, guys?
6 o'clock.
Yeah. All right.
They are doing they are going to host the annual breakfast at Petro again, the first week in December. We haven't decided on a date yet. We were going to discuss that on Wednesday night, so I'll take that back to them on Wednesday.
Okay, great. Thank you.
All I would say is just that had a coffee with the cops at the sheriff's department. They
Yeah.
spoke highly of our chief, really highly. They all did, especially the sheriff himself. It was really cool.
Nate used to actually work for us many years ago.
Yeah.
I think worked with Derek when.
Poacher. Yeah, it was really good to hear great feedback on our chief. It was cool.
Yeah.
And our department, particularly the chief.
Mr. Snyder.
Mr. staring at me.
You're up.
I received an email from one of my constituents, and I promised her, so you now know it's that half of the population of the city, that I would just mention it here. But it was several days ago, I guess now, maybe a week or so ago. She was in the vicinity of Ray's, and there were transients with signs asking for money. Not clear if it was in Ray's parking lot or out on the street. And she also indicated that it was maybe another person who was over by the gas station. So her request was, should we have a Medford-style rule about people asking for money? So I bring that to your attention.
We have the same ordinance Medford does already. It's not against the law to ask for money. The ordinance that Medford and we have is that you cannot transfer goods in the roadway. So if a panhandler walks into the roadway, then takes money from somebody in an automobile, then both the panhandler and the person in the automobile can be cited under our ordinance for transfer of property.
So if they're standing at an intersection with a traffic light and they ask for money, that would not be a good thing. But if they're in a parking lot,
That's protected by the Oregon Constitution.
but if they're in a parking lot of a commercial
If they're in a
activity,
parking lot that's private property,
personally have never seen anybody in our city doing that. Of course, I have in other places like Medford. So I don't know if this is an event that I'm missing, whether or not there hardly any ever happens. I mean, you have any insight?
To my knowledge, unless it's happened when I was on vacation sometime in the last 10 years, I've never seen a citation for that go through our office, so.
Okay, it's in the noise level then. Thank you, that's all.
Stuart?
I just want to say good luck to all the candidates running for office. It's been a great campaign season and happy for it to be coming to a close. Also like to tell the chief to be careful hanging that up in the police station just in case you knock it down. So,
Knock the police station down.
Well, let's talk.
Just have a quick update. I know that folks last time briefly at the council meeting discussed Title VII funding that is being discussed at the RVMPO. And I just wanted to give the update, since I wasn't here to do it, that the RVMPO already is planning to have that discussion come back up. So I know that we directed staff to ask that that conversation be agendized. Essentially the process is that there's a subcommittee that has been looking at that funding and will make a recommendation and then presentations. So I'll keep you all updated as those are being scheduled, but we're just waiting for that recommendation, so there's nothing to agendize at this point.
Nothing. Happy birthday to you and good luck to everybody running.
Thanks.
All right. Just to dovetail on what Sarah just said, they were holding private meetings to discuss the issue before then try to draft a policy to come back to the MPO. And I talked to, I forget who was over there, regarding the need to have it be public. So he's going to inform me as to when the meetings are so I can actually attend. Maybe you'd like to attend also. But they're holding private meetings. I said, you can't hold private meetings regarding that particular issue. It has to be public. They're going to let us know when those meetings are going to be held. I'm not sure how many of you know Kayla Parker, but Kayla Parker runs the Petro truck stop, and she's going to be leaving as of December 1st. I want to honor her because of all the work that she's done for the city. Lots and lots and lots and lots of work. Having Petro help out with dinners over at the church and other events like Easter egg hunts, and so they're always very, very involved. So I'm hoping on the next meeting is to honor her and have a proclamation and a nice gift for her, saying thank you for her service to our city before she leaves. She's going to take over the truck stop over in where is it? After Reno. That's right, Reno. And that's it for me. Anybody else? All right. With that, we'll adjourn the meeting. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Sure.